that I've heard a lot about Mark, and Mike Ludemoser is buddies with him. So after that, Craig Schroeder from Robin Hood Ventures is going to be here talking about raising money, venture capital, and after that, Mike Phelan, Andrew's buddy. That's Andrew Schwabe, by the way.
Hi.
He'll be in a couple of minutes. Mike Phelan started Set One, which is a technology company. Can I say that? I see you lose my cred. What is it?
It's a network monitoring technology. So it's devices they put on premise, and it scans and monitors all your stuff. But it's unique because they can just drop boxes anywhere, like 10 of them in an enterprise, and it just adapts to the environment.
It started at University of Delaware. He grew it, sold it recently to Bain Capital for a couple $100 million. And he's really a nice, friendly guy who will talk about what that experience was like. I think that's all. We have some other folks, but check out walnutstreetlabs.com for the complete listing. We have some night out events too. The third thing we do is we have an incubator here. We have 2 companies incubating, I would say 2 innovations. One is a big data utility, and the other is a Android app that's a file manager. Allows you to access any cloud storage device, and that is a collaboration between Walnut Street Labs and Andrew's company. And Andrew, let me segue here a little bit. Before I signed the dotted line on this space, I kind of was thinking, am I insane? Should I do this? I wasn't even telling my wife. I was like, I'm just going to sign it. And so I heard that Andrew was a Westchester University grad, and I just stalked him on LinkedIn. I said, hey, I'm thinking of doing this in Westchester. What do you think of that? Would you like to have lunch? And we ended up having lunch like 2 days later, and he was like, yeah, you should do it. And I said, great, you'd be an advisor? He's like, oh, slow down. And but like a week later, you were like, yeah, I'll do that. And I signed it after meeting a stranger in a restaurant. And not talking to my wife. So, still a risk taker, but he's been here ever since, giving good advice and bringing our first company into the incubator. So, it's with great pleasure that I'm going to introduce him in a minute to talk about his new venture. I guess the segue from there is that what this place has turned into is a real great networking space, and the value of bumping into somebody who's done something that you're looking to do is so crucial. A 15-minute conversation can save you a day's work, a week's work, 6 months or a year.
Clipping myself.
Good strategic decisions come fun. So I encourage people to come early to these and hang out for a reasonable amount of time after and talk to whoever you can. The last thing is this space and this particular event is sponsored by a few folks. Fox Rothschild law firm, a nationwide law firm with offices in Exton. Terry Kerwin is the resident legal expert helping us and other folks here, so thank you. Chester County Economic Development Council, also supporting this space through advocating and promoting us, but also with money. And we're reporting Westchester University. Again, there's been some change in leadership there, but we're hopefully getting that back. And anybody else? That's it, I think. We're working on that. So anyway, let's give Andrew a round of applause for coming. Doing his second stand-up meetup, startup meetup, and so
All right. Thank you very much for having me back. I spoke here, I guess it's been many months ago, whenever we first got Walnut Street Labs up and running. When we originally queued up my talk for today, it was about I guess it was a bragging session it was supposed to be, like me to tell you all about the new company, and I kind of don't want to do that. So what we're going to do is, a couple of thoughts that I put together were about this concept of reinventing yourself, because I kind of had to go through that same process of reinventing myself again with this company. And I've learned some interesting things that I want to share. And And then I promise for the people who only came to hear about the new company, that I will in fact give you an update and kind of tell you some of the hurdles and the thought process that yielded what we are doing now, and give you a little bit of tidbits of the juicy goodness that's inside. And I apologize now if I go over the top technical, because I'm just at heart, I'm an engineer, massive technology geek. So, if everybody's eyes just glaze over, I'll try to rein it back in a little bit. But I'm really informal, so if you got questions or something, raise your hand, stand up, throw paper, do whatever. Just get my attention, and we'll have a good time. So talking about reinventing yourself, I love to tell a story about my wife. And she's not here, so I can actually give a little more detail about that story. She came from a nice small town in Lancaster County. Love her family, love the land, love everything about her. But she came from one of those towns where it's meat and potatoes for meals all the time, right? And that's kind of it. She went to Westchester University. She studied business, and so she kind of got into this financial type of role. But really, some of her passion was around food. She wants to be able to cook like a famous chef in France, and wants to be able to make these pastries that just absolutely blow people away. And she had to make an intentional choice to reinvent herself, right? You follow what I'm talking about? That there was the cards were not stacked for her to be a French pastry chef, right? And she had to make a choice. She made that choice, and over a period of time, she went through trial and error, tried out things here and there. Family was the guinea pig, I was a little bit of the guinea pig, some of this stuff. And what's really cool is that she's got relationship with restaurants now, Chester County and Lancaster County, where they want her to make her now famous cheesecakes, which, by the way, she makes a Grand Marnier cheesecake, which just totally rocks my world, So she makes those, and people pay top dollar for it. Never, ever would she have thought about that. And it was mostly because she made a choice to take small steps and head toward reinventing herself. So we're going to talk about some of those things. I don't have the remote, so I'm going to press the Ben remote. All right, so for those of you that are interested, I am going to have this presentation up on Twitter after we're done. And next one. Quick overview of who the heck I am. Anybody like Futurama? Got any Futurama fans in here? All right, a couple people. So I'm that big of a geek. I have a lot of background in encryption and data security. My previous company, which was Point.io, which I was actually working at whenever I started getting involved in the lab. I've since hired a management team and transitioned all the control. And now that they're all up and running and they got their A and B round of funding and all that type of good stuff, I got jazzed and excited about something new, and that's why I jumped out and we're doing something new. I've mostly been focusing on mobile, social, privacy, interesting stuff. I used to do some FBI help hunting down sexual predators. This is like 8-10 years ago. I did that, and that was interesting, fun, and also scary stuff. And now I'm officially hacker number uno at the new startup Stash. And I'm an open source software and privacy advocate. Next slide, please. So I love this quote from Jerry Seinfeld. The good part's here at the end. Whatever the opposite of planned obsolescence is, that's what I'm into. What a great quote from Jerry Seinfeld. And there's a different perspective of this from a neat new book that I've been reading, which is the next slide. See, I'm going to bother him without the remote. Dana, since you found that book, that I've been reading that, I got a copy of it. This book is absolutely off the charts. Anybody who's interested in reading science fiction that is all about crazy technology and actually has a pretty good job of predicting nifty things happening in the internet culture, check out Cryptonomicon. Incredible book. Lots of fun. All right, so next slide. So, we're ultimately challenged that we face a couple things if we do not continually reinvent ourselves, right? We can obviously be disappointed that we didn't try this or that new thing, but ultimately in some industries you have the opportunity to potentially be squeezed out and completely left behind. Technology is an obvious option there. How crazy have smartphones changed in the last 10 years, right? If you're in that industry and you haven't kept up, you're irrelevant now. Every industry is like that. Not as many move quite as fast as technology, but it's a reality. And so what I'm hoping we do talk today is to inspire you to take a new step forward today in reinventing yourself. Now, you may think you're happy with yourself today, but the truth is that we should all be learning. We should all continue to be adapting because the world changes around us. Next slide. So let's talk about a couple of people that reinvented themselves. Talked about my wife, but there's no slide because I didn't want her to know about that. Ronald Reagan, right? What a cool story. What an amazing story. That you know, I said he was a B movie actor. You know, if any of his family was here, I'd probably juice that up a little bit. But the truth is he was a movie actor. He did westerns, and they were okay. You know, but he ended up radically changing things in the government. He shook everything up. He got some significant, huge percentage of swing votes from the Democratic Party to Republicans because of how he changed things up. Here's a man who reinvented himself in a major way. Next slide. National Geographic. So 1888 was their first magazine, and it was all about photos. And in 1914, they did their first color photographs. You know, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, it became increasingly obvious that National Geographic magazine was that thing on the bookshelf at your grandparents' house. And nobody really had a whole heap of interest in looking at that, and they weren't relevant to a new age. They reinvented themselves because they didn't want to die. So they relaunched the National Geographic Channel in 2001, and they even broke some of the rules, and they said, we're not going to be just about, you know, strict, stuffy documentaries. We're going to actually try to get a little more people interested. And they found new ways to excite people about learning. And it's been a tremendous success. They actually have succeeded in doing that. Next slide. Hopefully some of you will like this one. Did you know that they started in 1889 selling playing cards? That's ridiculous. Playing cards, okay? This is even more crazy. They actually ran a taxi service for a while, right? Because they were like, who am I? Right? They had no clue. Trial and error. And the ultimate goal is, you know, 77, they came up with this thing called TV Game 6, which nobody bought, but it was, you know, a massive leap forward in technology. And then in 1980, Donkey Kong, which revolutionized, you know, and made all of us lose our quarters. And then NES in 85, which just changed the game, right? Far, far leap from here to there. I mean, a lot of time also, but when you look at this perspective, you should be saying to yourself, if you don't adapt to the times, all right, then Nintendo would have just been a company that sold cards, playing cards, in the late 1800s that nobody ever bothered to think about again.
Wonder whether that was our logo back then.
It wasn't. It wasn't. I tried to put it. I had a picture of like an old iron plate off of one of their buildings that was like the Nintendo something something other playing card company. All right, and it was hilarious, but it didn't show up too well on here. Google it. Google Images, right? Probably already doing that on your phones now. But really amazing story. This one opened my eyes. I didn't know this before I started researching it for this presentation. So great story. Next slide. So one of the most critical aspects of reinventing yourself is to make sure that you tap into what is the passion in your own life. This quote obviously is from Hamlet. Everybody know that? You've read that? Polonius was an interesting old fool whenever he gave this line to his son Laertes, if I remember that correctly. And the idea was, you know, if you're going to go out into the world, here's real quick 1,000 pieces of advice of how you should live your life. Okay? And taken out of context, this has profound meaning, but taken in context, it's just another rambling. Right? But the whole idea of being true to yourself is to say, if you're going to enjoy life, if you're going to be able to sleep at night, if you actually want to become anything of significance, the most important thing you can do is take care of yourself and make sure that you are the kind of person that you want to be. Right? Be true to yourself. Do you want to be that guy, that woman who people look up to? Right? That's what this is at the heart of it. Next slide. So the obvious thing we can do is personally make effort to start to reinvent ourselves. Okay, I certainly can afford to lose a few pounds and be healthier. Okay, there's probably a laundry list of many, many things for a lot of you that you can work on. But the idea of making one of these or multiple of these a priority all of a sudden begins to change the game for you. All right? All of a sudden, mentally, you're in a different place. All of a sudden, you speak and you act more confidently. All of a sudden, you are more productive in everything you do. This is the significant first part. I love this one here, learning something new. It's amazing how many people that I've spoken to who are like, I'm in such a rut, and I work so many hours doing this, and yeah, I like what I do, but this is just all I do. And it's so easy to simply say, well, add something new, right? If you want to be able to pivot, to use a technology term, if you want to be able to enhance some aspect of your life, then it takes intentional choice to learn something new. I mean, learn how to ride a motorcycle, learn how to scuba dive, learn a new language, pick up a new book for a topic that you always thought was kind of cool, but is way out of your education realm, and learn it, right? Reading is a great way to be inspired and start doing that. I'm terrible at reading. I have to force myself to do it. But whenever I do, I always feel so much more invigorated and inspired to continue to learn more things. Next slide. So in terms of professionally in a company, you guys know the term pivot. You've heard that many, many times. Has anybody actually done a successful pivot in their company? Cool. And what did that pivot look like? Just to...
Well, we moved from product orientation to a consulting orientation.
So moving from product to consulting, all right, which is a major shift. And not an easy one. Yeah. Kind of like from moving from trading cards to a gaming console. This first one is interesting. A lot of entrepreneurs, and by the way, the audience I'm talking to, you wouldn't be here unless you were already a special breed of person. All right? You don't come in this door and listen to these sessions unless you're already the kind of person that wants to make a difference, that has the extra drive, that wants to change the world in some regard. So I'm pretty sure I'm talking to the right audience here, all right? When I say this is a problem for most entrepreneurs, all right? We're typically our own worst critic. And whenever you fail at something, it's real easy to have a pity party for a long time, okay? And it's also real easy to give up and just take a job somewhere, all right? And sometimes it's a short time frame, and sometimes it's necessary. But the critical aspect of understanding about your life career and the impact you will have as an entrepreneur is that failure is an opportunity to learn. You will fail, otherwise you're not trying, right? You know, when you try, you're gonna have failures. Learn from them makes you a better person and gives you confidence. Because guess what? What did they say about Edison and how many failures he had before he had one success, right? You remember?
Yeah, but it's also an interesting misnomer because he was credited for the light bulb and he stole it from Tesla.
Which was Tesla,
Yeah.
right.
So it's funny because...
Or maybe it was Bell, but anyway, it's like thousands and thousands and thousands of failure with incremental, sometimes incremental growth, and often incremental, backtracking before something eureka happens. And that's, you have to understand that the journey is the one of significance. Nobody who made anything substantial in the world did it by accident the first time. It just doesn't happen that way. There are some interesting stories, but if they're saying that we had instantaneous, explosive success right out of the gate, then you don't know the full backstory. That's the reality of it. So one of the things you can do to help make that pivot is continually test your strategies and theories. We are coming out of an age where we are overly protective about ideas, but now we're into a paranoia stage where we're afraid that people are going to steal our ideas, which really fights the whole idea of collaborative, growth. All ultimately, we need to find a level of communication we can with our peers, with people like you find at a lab here, people in your industry's community, and socialize your ideas before you invest too much time in building them out. Because the truth is that you don't know all the details of what you're going to encounter. And everybody that you meet is smarter than you in one area or another, right? If you start to get that perspective and kind of check your ego at the door and realize that everyone you talk to knows a whole lot more than you about certain things, then that means that everyone's a gold mine of knowledge. And all you have to do is show a little bit of interest, show a little bit of effort, and do some give and take. And all of a sudden, people will open up and they'll be glad to help you when they see that you're not about taking their ideas, right? It fights that paranoia that we already have. You know, hey, I've got this great idea, so let me go publish it on the internet, show everybody, do presentations, etc. Before I do anything, now some other big company's going to come and steal the idea. You got to take risk, and you have to learn to trust if you're ever going to get anywhere. There's a balance between it. You know, if you're writing a patent, you don't publish it online, right? For obvious reasons. You don't publish your source code if you're early stage. These are obvious, but you really, really, really have to socialize this. You will never find out your blind spots about your pivot unless you do this. Next slide. Hey, that's the reality of it. So you acknowledge your weaknesses and you learn from other people's successes. You know, study what businesses are doing that are really succeeding. The Facebook story is an interesting one. Made a lot of enemies on the journey. I mean, who's seen The Social Network, right? So there's a lot of things that were not done right, but it ended up financially amazing. It's because it was a revolutionary idea, but it all started out with basically being disrespectful with somebody else's idea, you know. So, do you want to be that guy? I don't know. That's up for discussion. But what I do know that I don't know it all, right? And that's critical. When you face your failures, just don't give up. If you are in a community like this where you can socialize your ideas, whenever a failure comes, allow yourself to do a post-mortem, all right? Evaluate why that failed and make your choices as to how to improve and learn from it so that you don't make those same mistakes again. And then work harder after failure. Next slide. All right, so where are we on time?
It is 9:30.
All right. I'm always guilty of having too much content, so I try to race through stuff. But by all means, if you want to pause on something, make sure you let me know. So let's talk about the Stash journey. Stash is the name of the new company that I just started, and Dana here is my partner. So the two of us are tag teaming this. Really excited about this, but the idea, it gelled quickly. A lot quicker than previous companies that I've done. Some of my previous experience, FusionDocs is a document management company. Point.io is document management middleware. And some of my stuff in the FBI and in the Air Force were on information security and encryption. This new company is all about encryption. And I can tell you that the experience I got in these areas with encryption was relatively surface deep. Where I started doing a pivot 15 years ago was that I had an interest in cryptology and I started educating myself. So I went and got the books, I started doing stuff, and it was totally on the side. You know, I ended up implementing some of the things that I've learned into these technologies, which actually made them stronger and better. But that was never my field of expertise. So I had to make a turn to now become an expert in cryptography, cryptology. And it's been an interesting journey because I have blind spots, right? I know a lot about stuff that and I've had a lot of experience over the years, but I have a lot of blind spots. And so it's required me to continually educate myself. And it takes going to events and talking to people and have them ask questions that I don't know how to answer. And I can either sugarcoat it and play the part, you know, and make it look like, well, your question's irrelevant and I can play down what's there, or I can be real. And I'll tell you what, being real all of a sudden opens up a whole new network of people who want to work together, right? Because nobody knows it all. And the really, really smart people you want to work with know that nobody knows it all. It becomes a valuable network. So next slide. Next slide. All right. So let's talk for a moment about why Stash even exists. Of course, I haven't told you what it is, but I'll get there. We had an interesting situation with the internet up until about 2 years ago, where we thought that security just rock and rolled. We all relied on SSL and all the goody security stuff that people put on our iPhones and our Android devices, and we were just pretty sure that things were all together. Like I said on there, we were okay that our kids posted pictures of themselves and their location all the time. We just thought this is social networking. This is the way. This is the new way of the world. All of a sudden, this is a bigger problem, right? And if we go to the next slide, there's some interesting, and one more. So 110 million customers hacked, 2 million Facebook passwords stolen. This cracks me up. I can't relate to what a billion means, right? Because I can't wrap my head around it. But 1.2 billion usernames and passwords stolen. If this doesn't scare you, I don't know what does. Let's go to the next slide and press one more. Then, of course, we had the WikiLeaks information, and we had the Snowden leaks, and now all of a sudden we're, people who've warned us for years that the government has been spying on us. Holy crap, they're right. For people who work in security and IT, a very somber reality, right? Because guess what? All the technologies that we rely on day to day, well, they're not really secure. That's pretty scary. Next slide. And an extra push. There we go. Check this out. Google Glasswares can steal your password from a distance. So if I'm wearing Google Glass and in the front row here you got your iPad and you're doing your passcode, I can use this app that triangulates the angle of your fingers when you're tapping on the front screen. With my Google Glass, I can record it and figure out your password. All right? This is just the technology that got published online that we know about. All right, what about all the stuff that's being made in China that we don't know about? There's a new handset that is being manufactured by a Chinese company. That's an Android device, and it's top-of-the-line specs, blah, 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 half the price of everyone else. And somebody did a dissection and took it all apart and took a look at the software. We got a nodding head here. You probably know where I'm going. And they went, wait a second, what's this? And here's a back door that feeds every single piece of information from every app and sends it over to a Chinese server for big data collection. Right? That's not a documented feature. That is, we would call it a bug or an undocumented feature.
Yeah, but it's a really cheap phone.
Sure is. You're right. So, this is an interesting one. Facebook sued for lots of money over revenge porn. There's an interesting problem with the way we share stuff online. And that's things that are social tend to live longer than they need to live. And they tend to be accessible by more people than they should be. And this really starts to feed the passion and the vision of why we're even doing this new company. So next slide. So the PRISM project is what got revealed by the NSA whistleblowers. And there are actually multiple. Edward Snowden is the one that gets the medal for being the most prominent one, but there were several.
And the chance to live in Russia.
Exactly. Which 20 years ago would be kind of cool, but now it kind of sucks.
Actually, in comparison to living in Hawaii.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Do these dates here kind of freak you out of when these companies joined this program? So they're able to take all this stuff, this information, they're collected directly from these services. 2007 is when Microsoft joined this program, right? That's ancient in terms of the internet life cycle. And Google in 2009. There's a reason why people are so freaked out about everything that Google has. Next slide. So the challenge here is that we know that all the technologies that we rely on a regular basis all of a sudden are no longer truly secure. Now, this doesn't mean that the NSA has a file on each and every one of us. They might. But the truth is that they have the ability to do it. That doesn't mean that they are doing it. And so the best thing we can do is not panic, right? Because it's really easy to look at some of these slides and to go, you know, holy crap, I should move to a farm and get rid of my cell phone and stuff, because people don't need to know about all these things, especially if you've got the, you know, another life on the internet, which a lot of people do. So all this type of stuff that we're relying on, it's no longer secure. Next slide. Yeah, we just did that. Next slide. Anybody know what photo DNA is? All right. So there's this interesting story that came out, and these headlines are literally from the last 2 or 3 months. Google reported a user to an organization that tracks down sex trafficking and child pornography and stuff like that. And they reported this guy because he had stuff in his inbox. Okay? So, yay, all right? We want to get rid of those people, okay? However, that concept has interesting implications, all right? What they do is they use this product, which is a Microsoft product, by the way, and that's interesting. This Microsoft product takes images and it flattens them to two colors, black and white, chops them up, and turns every image into a number, into a hash. All right? And then it uses that library of hashes to scan people's email and say, hey, this guy's got offensive stuff in there, now we report him. That means that people don't actually have to go in and eyeball your email. Nobody's sitting in a terminal reading your email, okay? At least not today, all right? So, again, thumbs up. Cool that they're able to actually clean up that type of stuff. But the concept of how they can do that scares the heck out of me, right? Because when do they decide, well, it's not just images and not just offensive images? When do they start scanning the content and hashes of all the rest of your stuff? And now they don't have to ask permission to trend or ask you to give feedback on things. They can just figure it all out from your email. All right? That's a little scary. A couple weeks after that, Microsoft did the same thing and reported somebody for offensive content in their inbox. So it's real. This product has been around for a while. Next slide. You've heard of this, right? The right to be forgotten. It's been in the news like crazy. Show of hands, who's heard of that? Okay. So I think this is kind of a big fat joke. I think that the concept is right. I think it's the right answer to what the public needed to hear. But the truth is that asking a service like Google to just forget everything about you is kind of like calling up the FBI and say, hey, you know that big library of illegal phone taps that you had on my home? Why don't you just get rid of them, because I really would like that. All right? And chances are you're going to get something that's like, okay, thanks for your call. Sure, we'll be happy to get right on that. Okay? And really nothing will change. All right? Best case scenario is that they cleanse your personal information, like your address and your name, out of that, but they still keep all your information because they still want to trend against you. I'm not an overly paranoid person, but this just smells fishy to me. I don't see that really being a viable, proper way to solve the problem. Anybody agree, or am I off base? All right.
It's a concept that came out of Europe.
It did. And Europe is much more privacy protective than the United States was. Even though in the late 1800s, the Fourth Amendment says that the government will protect our privacy, and that without good cause, there's no reason why anyone should have access to your private information. That just totally changed with PRISM. They just totally undid that. It's still written that way in our documentation, it's just nobody cares.
Well, they said search and seizure, not collection.
Right. But in order to collect, you have to search and seize. Right? Next slide.
Do you really think they're actually deleting? It's like they're moving it from S3 to Glacier.
You see, I don't know. I think they got to be doing something, because they're answering the call from Europe. But I really doubt that they're trashing such valuable, large volumes of information. So I really can't believe
I
that.
doubt Google deletes anything.
I agree with that. So maybe they took it out of the active index so they can passively index it on the side. You know, who knows? So is the answer to be anonymous? Right? Again, building up to value prop of what we're doing in Stash. And I apologize if we run a little bit late here. It's 9:44. I got to talk faster. Is being anonymous really the answer? The truth is that if we allow truly anonymous stuff, we're actually going to be causing more problems. And next slide. True anonymity is actually just going to open the door to the dark side of the internet. All right. What happened whenever we allowed truly anonymous sharing of content with torrents? All right. Piracy and porn. All right. That's what dominated it. All right. Was there actually a legitimate business value to it? Probably, but man, you have to dig deep. You have to really dig deep to find that anymore. All right. Tor is another system. You guys know what Tor is? All right. So Tor is another way for you to anonymize or encrypt and obfuscate your connection on your computer. The Kremlin, this is Russia, the Kremlin put out a bounty and said we will pay large volumes of cash for people who can provide technology to crack who is using Tor. Why? Because the government's going to get in. It's based on standards technology, and so it's only a matter of time. So they have the best hackers in the world on it. Because
So you're saying we shouldn't have an anonymous access to the internet?
I'm saying that it's not as anonymous as we think it is.
But I thought you said it was bad. It was bad thing. The bad stuff comes from it.
I'm saying that it encourages bad behavior.
How about if your government's trying to get you?
Well, and that's kind of the point of we need a solution, right? We need a solution for the common person to make sure that the government doesn't get into stuff that's important to us.
They do.
You're right. Hey, and guess what? That's actually what we are attempting to do with Stash, is to help fix that problem. It's a journey, though. Next slide. So, what we think we need for the future. We think we need some way to do peer validation for data integrity, and also to kind of encourage people to be responsible citizens on the internet. Because we don't want people to take advantage of anonymity for doing illegal activities. All right? That's not going to help anyone. That's not going to get us any further as a society, and it's not going to make us any safer. So we need to allow things like whistleblowing, right? Because certainly you don't want people to be filleted for alerting to the public to something that is a major violation or issue. I heard a story about a person at Exxon who heard about the big oil spill way back in the day, and they sat on the knowledge for what, a week or two, because they knew that if they were the one that reported it, that they would be skinned alive, they'd be drawn and quartered, they'd be made an example of. Not only would they lose their job, but they and their family would be devastated. Right? That stuff can't happen. All right, we got to be able to enable that type of stuff, but we have to make sure that people are not passing illegal information or spies, enabling spies. Social content, we think, needs to stay social and never get collected and stored long term. If a conversation we're having online in Facebook about a party is something that's social, chances are it needs to stay social, and that 10 years from now, whenever I'm applying for a new job, that it's not used as part of my interview process. Oh, well, I found this on Facebook, and by the way, this happens today. People miss job opportunities because of pictures and stuff they posted on Facebook today. All right, that's a crime that it's even allowed to happen.
They get fired too.
Yep, absolutely.
And ethically, if you were trying to work for an organization that's going to dig so deep to try to ruin to your face value, maybe it's not even really worth working for them in the first place.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. But unfortunately, that means probably most Fortune 100 companies
for sure.
are no longer worth working for.
Exactly.
Figured that out?
Hey, it's a stable job, man. But the people that are here, we're that different breed, right? That want to do something different, that don't want to adhere to those rule sets. So, and we need technologies that encourage responsible use. Bang, which is exactly what you're going at. All right. We don't have all the answers today. All right. Well, it's if we encourage use, then we can use anonymity, right? for certain things. Being able to use anonymous communication and highly secure communication to protect us for the things that matter, but in a way that doesn't enable people from doing irresponsible use of it. That's the missing link. You can't have one without the other. Is kind of the connecting the dots that I was trying to do.
I'm dubious.
Good. Because that allows you to subjectively look at everything that's presented and decide which works best for you. And that's being educated and questioning everything allows you to make the right choices. I encourage that. Next slide. So, finally, eventually, at the very, very end here, talking about what Stash is. What are we all about? Well, we are just started, August 2014. Here we are, still in the same month. We just started the company. We are building the world's first peer-validated ephemeral messaging platform. What that means is, whenever we send a message, it could be text, documents, files, video, audio, etc. Before that message can be consumed by the recipient, it has to be validated by a third party. If this sounds a lot like Bitcoin, it's because it is. Heavily influenced by Bitcoin. The idea that somebody that's a third party has to validate that the message is authentic and that I'm allowed to send messages and they have no idea what the content of that message is. All right? And then before somebody can receive it, another person has to audit that information, make sure that you're allowed to receive it, that you haven't been involved in stealing credit cards and doing other questionable activities. That third-party audit ensures that you're allowed to receive that message. And only when all those things happen does the message get from A to B. And by the way, it's triple or quadruple encrypted, so that before it even leaves your device, for example, before it leaves your Android device, a custom certificate on this device encrypts it, then it goes out to the cloud, then it's triple encrypted, and then before it gets back to the other person, it's decrypted with their own certificate. Which means that our platform, Stash, never gets to see what the content is inside your messages. All right? We never actually have the content of what you're sending, whether it's a file or text or anything like that. We're working toward what we think is the Holy Grail. We've got blind spots. We're learning. Yes, question?
How long is the life cycle of a message?
Interesting and very valuable question. The life cycle of a message is something you can customize. When I send it, I can assign a time to live policy to it. And that could be one-time use only, which means as soon as you confirm that you've received it, it's deleted. Or I can make it live for a certain time period, weeks, etc.
And also, my question is also more like, how long does it take the message to get from sender to receiver?
Oh, it's fast. And it'll only get faster the bigger our network grows. Right now, we've got multiple nodes that take care of picking up and doing that validation and audit automatically. But the more people that participate, the faster it'll work.
So it's all automated?
It is. It's all automated, yep. The other interesting thing about this is that the message contents itself never actually hit magnetic disk. All right, so what that means is that there's no chance of it running a backup and having a copy of that content sitting someplace so that people find it in a cache or you accidentally give somebody access to it later. That is absolutely eliminated. In fact, whenever a message is delivered and the original content is destroyed, we certify that it's destroyed in the audit trail so that you can actually audit and see when it was sent, when it was received, when it was validated, and when it was destroyed and removed from storage. And oh, by the way, every single message is encrypted with a different methodology. So if we're sending 50 messages between us, each of the 50 is encrypted in a different way and is routed and broken up through a different path so that even if you were able to control all 4 tiers of our application and crack one message, you'd never be able to get the rest because it's different every time.
Did you write the encryption library?
I leveraged open source tools and customized it. So I did write technology that is doing the encryption. The interesting point for the encryption is RSA style certificates are on the list of what the NSA has cracked, so we don't use them. So we use everything but.
That's what I was interested in
Yep.
about.
Yep. We use everything but those.
I figured out.
Those are the ones we know.
That's correct. And what's really cool about our system is that we can easily go in and change the policy of how things get encrypted, so that if we find out that there's a new one that's violated, we can simply go in and change the policy of which protocols it uses and which methodologies for encryption, and it does it on the fly and it changes automatically. The idea is it's real time. It's real time.
How about metadata? That's the whole problem with the NSA. It's not so much they're getting all the content, they're getting all the money. So how are you?
Well, what we're building here is not an app. That's probably important that I clarify that. This is not a new thing you download from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. This is a platform which enables people to build apps that use this as a transport layer. All right, so that all of a sudden your enterprise app that is already talking between your web server and your mobile device, if you use Stash, all of a sudden now that channel is highly secure, encrypted, and peer validated. So to answer your question it depends a whole heap on what you send and how you send through the API. If you store your metadata here and you store just your payload of your binary content in Stash, then you obviously have a blind spot. But if you wrap it all into the package that goes through Stash, then everything's obfuscated and encrypted.
But you're knowing who it's going to.
Well, what we designed is a system that one of the two, sender or recipient, can be anonymous. They can both be known if you want, but one of them can be anonymous, which means that if you're building a whistleblower application for Exxon, and I need to be able to anonymously submit it someplace, I can only submit it to a known entity, which would be Exxon Corporate. Okay? But you can't do anonymous to anonymous, which means we have an audit trail of who is sending stuff to who, or who's posting it anonymously, okay, but we don't ever have a copy of the content. And that's intentional so that if someone does say, well, this user account is suspected to be doing fraudulent activity, then we can flag that. And our internal intrusion detection system would then catch that flag of that account when they ever try to receive content. So I send it, and the person whose flag tries to receive it, that last audit that happens before they receive it, would catch that and flag that. And you can set a paranoia bit on there, so if anything goes wrong during the life cycle of that delivery, you can have the content trashed. Just have it wiped and destroyed, and then you notify the sender and say, sorry, an exception occurred, a violation occurred with security, and we get rid of the message. All right? Yes?
So you're basically just replacing like HTTP or SSH for developers who want a messaging protocol?
To start out, we're enhancing what runs over HTTP. Our vision for the future is to actually make a low-level internet protocol so that you can actually have rack-mounted devices and networks. And so all of your current apps work from peer-to-peer locations, and all the network traffic in between, it just goes through an obfuscated, peer-validated network based on the hardware.
Is your API HTTP? Or?
It is.
Okay.
It's a RESTful API intended primarily to get people into the idea of being a peer-validated messaging platform is new, right? So we need to get people familiar with the concept, get people participating and understand how it works before we can reach deeper into deeper protocols, which takes big dollars, right? We need customers, we need investors before we can really get that deep. Yes?
I'm getting a little lost in some of this. Can you just give a real life example of how something like this would work? I mean, just.
Yeah, so Twitter is inherently unsafe, right? Imagine a Twitter, if you would, where your device has a key so that you can only access those messages sent to you with just your device, because that's your device, all right? And the people you send it to can only get it on their devices. If you did that, then anything that happens in the middle that people would see online or that Google indexes and stuff like that would just all be gibberish. It's broken up, chopped up, encrypted in multiple ways and stored, blah, blah, so that people just simply can't get it.
So I'm just thinking if somebody posted a picture online of something and you wanted to tweet a comment about it.
Yep.
Who would be able to, people wouldn't be able to just see the Twitter comments underneath that picture of what you tweeted because you
Potentially would, see, because whenever I send a message, I can assign to it how long I think it should live and who all can consume it. So if I do a picture, then probably the more relevant scenario then would be Facebook, right? So when I post a Facebook picture using something like Stash, then I would say it only gets to live for a month. And after a month, it's gone. Yes?
So a couple of different examples. If you're manufacturing in China and your headquarters in the United States, and you have a design file you want to send to your Chinese manufacturer, how are you going to send that?
like an Apple email or whatever.
Yep.
So if you attach it to an email, organized crime can start looking out for this kind of stuff. Or people that want to perform industrial espionage can start looking out for this stuff. They know where you are, they know where your recipient is, they can start looking out for this stuff. Another example would be, do you ever fill out a mortgage application, scan it, send it to somebody? Well, a mortgage application probably has everything that anybody would need to get into your life on an identity theft basis. How would you send that? You might say, I'll put it in a Dropbox. Well, organized crime is working every day to crack the security of Dropbox. And the problem is that Dropbox doesn't really do anything to make it hard to beyond, let's say if you get through the front door of Dropbox, then it's easy. All those files are there. So how do you go forward confidently and saying, okay, yeah, this is important. If I lost control of this, this would be bad. How do you proceed on your end today?
Can you advance to the next slide there?
Yes.
And one more. So I know we're short on time here, so I'm going to wrap up here, and I'll be happy to talk to anyone who wants to geek out about the technology afterwards. But this basically does a snapshot of sending it from, a file from a location to a device where it gets split with multiple keys, stored in different locations, has to be validated by multiple different people before it can come back here. So at any point in time, we design this system so that, if any of these tiers are broken, let's say that 4 out of 5 of these tiers are compromised by hackers, okay? You still can't get the message in clear text. You still can't get the original message back out. You have to own all of the tiers in order to be able to decrypt it. And even we can't, because encryption and decryption happens here and before it even leaves. So if you do that too, there's simply no way. Simply no way. And this is what we're going after, to make things so extraordinarily complex and obfuscated that it is not practical to even try to hack it.
Is this exponentially more secure or one order of magnitude?
This is exponentially, because the policies you can define, you see like n, n-1, n-2, the policies you can define allow it to say, if I need 10 levels of encryption, you simply set a policy that says do it 10x over. And then every one of your messages is 10x over encrypted with unique keys, and the keys are separated to 10 different places, etc.
So given that that's the case, you would be a target for acquisition by somebody fast. Is this a passion thing, or if some big security company came and said we want that tomorrow, what's your deal?
I would say, give me a big check and I'll give you early access to the software. Is what I would say. Yes?
Do you suppose there could be some social networks or organizations that would not allow stash? Or that there would be a policy of not allowing it?
Yep.
Facebook, they really cultivate a lot of advertising by going into your, by targeting. I mean, that is a way that a lot of, that is a...
I think a lot of people who monetize based on collecting information are going to be very resistant. But the problem is that the more the public becomes aware of the value and how it protects them, the more they're going to have to give in. All right? And so we're hoping that we not only create a technology that's going to be valuable, but that we start a movement, all right, that starts to change things. All right? And eventually they're going to have to bend, all right, if this is what the public wants.
A vast cultural change it could be in terms of...
Yeah, it could be very significant, because all of a sudden maybe the Facebooks don't hold all of your digital content.
And
So-
the issue of ownership then is also in dispute, right?
I see there's a couple more questions. I want to get through the last few slides here and kind of wrap up since we're short on time. So next slide. So here's where I wanted to do the capstone, right? Is bring it back around to pivot. What I had to do is I had to, over time, chip away at the encryption thing, right? So that I could eventually step into the shoes of someone who actually knows what the heck they're talking about, all right? It took me time to do that pivot. At the same time, I had to make that pivot quickly whenever the industry all of a sudden changed with the NSA whistleblowing, right? It's all kind of come together now at an interesting and exciting time for us, all right? But it allows you to learn from this process, because these things happen all the time in industries everywhere, all right? Be observant of what's going on. Dream big, never give up. Yeah, keep learning something new, all right? Watch what's going on, figure out a solution for it, and then go for it. Go for it big. All right? Failures will be your stepping stones to doing something significant. I think is that the last one? One more slide? There we go. Thank you. All right, thank you very much. So there's more questions, I'm sure, so feel free. Bring it on. Yeah.
So Have you